Audio on demand from Vision Christian Media.
Coming up today on The Story.
When we did the walkthrough, there were just these men sitting there on these scruffy chairs. They were just staring at me, and I thought, what have I done here? Why am I doing this? I don't have what it takes. I don't have anything in common with these people. I'm not going to know what to say. I'm not going to know what to do. Yeah, it was quite a sinking feeling.
The Story.
G'day, I'm Jimmy Colfax. Welcome to The Story. Well, Amanda Donahoe and her husband always had a heart to help the marginalised and oppressed in society. This led them to serve in various places around Australia, including as managers of their church's rooming house in Melbourne. Sadly, Amanda's husband was tragically killed in 2006, and suddenly her partner in ministry was gone. However, the Lord tugged her heart back to the rooming house they had served at 20 years earlier, and she is now the CEO of Servants Community Housing. We'll find out how this all came about as Amanda Donahoe shares her story. She's chatting with Eric Scatterbo today in our Melbourne studios.
Amanda Donahoe, welcome to the program.
Hi, Eric. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you with us, and we want to find out your journey to becoming the CEO of Servants Community Housing. But first, before we get into any of that, I just have to ask you about this little hobby that you have. In cold weather, you swim in the Yarra River. Is that right?
It is. It started during COVID, the first year of COVID when we had the lockdowns.
Just wanted to do something different?
Well, absolutely. Didn't we all? We're trapped in our little 5K.
Oh, wait a second. I went for walks.
Yes,
I didn't suddenly
right.
decide to jump in a river.
Well, you would be...
Especially in July.
I saw a little Facebook post on our local Facebook group. I live in inner city Melbourne, and there was a little post that came up and said, I've seen that some people are swimming in the Yarra. And then I put a little post under it and said, I'm interested to know too if anyone's swimming in the Yarra, because I'm a pool swimmer and I do a bit of ocean swimming. But of course, with the 5K, I couldn't go out of that 5K.
Oh, right.
And so there was, all the pools were closed. I couldn't get to the beach. I was wanting to keep swimming fit, going a bit stir crazy. We're all walking around.
Yeah.
And so someone got back to me, and so I went down at 7 o'clock one morning, and there was a group of women jumping into the Yarra, just a small group at that stage. And then, as you said, as people were walking by and we're there, day after day after day, there would be these people saying, oh my gosh, you're swimming in the Yarra. It's so brown. It's so dirty.
On the coldest days.
And it's cold. This was the middle of winter. We were like 7 degrees, 8 degrees we were jumping in. And these people would just randomly take off their clothes and jump into the river with us. And then we'd put them onto the WhatsApp group. We had over 100 people.
Really?
Coming down. Well, not coming down, but on the WhatsApp group. And there's now a core group of us. And I'm still going down at least twice a week and swimming in the cold water. Even during summer, which I don't find anywhere near as invigorating or beautiful as what it is in the coldest part of the year.
What is the attraction?
Where we swim is out of sight of any buildings. So you're going up the river. There's trees on both sides. You can see the sun rising over the water, and in the really cold times there's like mist coming off the water, and it just, as I go up, I
could see all that from the pathway.
You can.
Walk.
There is something about being in it, and I used to swim with my head down until one day, and it was in summer, I saw a snake go over the river ahead of me, and then I became nervous, but I realised, that when I'm swimming with my head up, I'm actually seeing the beauty of the river, and particularly during the cold when like I said, this mist, and there's just every day is different, and it's just so beautiful, and it just brings me back to God. It's with the time when I feel like I just want to pray and praise Him for, well, apart from the beauty, but it just makes me thankful. I'm able to thank, I just get into a real sense of gratitude for what we have around us, and then come back. And it's something about the cold, it just is very centering. I know there's a lot of people that talk about the cold water and meditation, and I understand that, you can't think about a lot of other stuff while you're freezing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And then, of course, we get out and there's no hot showers, there's not even a coffee shop, there's nothing. You have to try and unbend your freezing cold fingers and, do up your buttons or whatever, and then I ride home and then I get my shower, and it's just the whole experience is just what I really look forward to. They're my best mornings.
I applaud you for wanting to be close to God, but I would certainly be saying to the Lord, there's got to be another way.
It's, I don't know, something about the challenge, and anyone that it is a bit addictive. Anyone that does this cold water swimming, they do say it's an addiction.
Is it
But I
really?
think it's a healthy addiction.
Really interesting.
Yeah, it's great. I love
I'm
it.
not tempted at all.
No?
But
Oh,
I applaud
can't-
you for it. That's wonderful.
Yeah, it's hard to get people down there. I don't know why.
Okay, so if anybody's listening, it happens to be near the Yarra River
Yep, in
on
a
a
city.
weekday morning
Yep,
in the middle of the city of Melbourne,
yep,
you might see our guest,
yep.
Amanda Donahoe, swimming with a bunch of other crazy people. Okay, that has nothing at all to do with anything we're talking about today, other than giving us a little insight into your thinking, that you like to try new things, I guess, things that make you feel close to the Lord.
It is about mental health, and I do now have a lot to do with mental health. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you think that helps mental health? I mean, personally, I think that shows a lack of mental health, but
Yeah.
but I could be wrong.
They do say that cold water swimming can be very beneficial for people's mental health, as I alluded.
Is that right?
Yeah, because it just helps you forget about what's troubling you, because you are more concerned.
You're so numb.
Yeah, you're numb. You're facing a different challenge, and so you're more focused on that than on your problems and what might be troubling you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. I will think about it for 2, maybe 3 seconds. But moving right along, let's find out about your journey to becoming a CEO. And that all started back in the eastern suburbs of Melbourne, where we are sitting right now.
Correct. My family, I was very much the good little girl that went to church, and went to a church that by the time I was 18, all the other teenagers had long since rebelled against their parents and was not coming to church. So my brothers and I...
That wasn't you?
No, we I don't know, we were very loyal. So it wasn't until... and to be honest, I was questioning what on earth all this was about, because I couldn't see what people sitting for an hour on a hard surface in a cold church had to do with anything that they did for the rest of their life. It was challenging me. I was sort of, asking questions about that. And then I went on a Scripture Union camp to what they call Beach Mission, which just involved almost like running like a Sunday school program down at the beaches. And it was with like 60 or 70 other
I'm seeing
young
this
people.
theme of water.
No, it was nothing. No, back then I hated sport. So went to this and was just really staggered, stunned, overwhelmed by all these people that had a passion for God, and like it was, I'd never seen it before.
That wasn't in your church.
No, it wasn't. Sadly. And look, I think it was in the hearts of people in the church, and they were doing good things, but I didn't. Like my mum took me to visit some refugees. They had, and this is back in the 70s, they had a refugee program for some Vietnamese refugees. We went to their, they had Housing Commission flat, and I just remember going up the back stairs and nearly gagging at the smell of the garlic and the food. Now we all know it and we think it's absolutely delicious, but it was so foreign back then. But that was what Mum did, and that was her way of serving the Lord. But I didn't see it. And so I needed to see people that were young and enthusiastic and passionate about serving God. And so then it became very important to me, so that when I went to university and then ended up at a conference, and there was this young man who was very passionately asking questions of the guest speaker, and then I happened to sit next to him at the conference dinner, and that was like, here is someone that is also really trying to do things, think differently, think radically, live their faith, and how does that work out in practice? And so I guess the rest is history, and his name was Phil, and I married him.
And the rest is history.
You're listening to The Story. Today, Eric Scatterbo is chatting with Amanda Donahoe, who's the CEO of Servants Community Housing in Melbourne. Amanda's sharing her life journey and how her and her husband's heart for helping the oppressed in society led them to various places in Australia. Next, we'll hear how the Lord led them to serve at their church's rooming house in Melbourne. All that and more when we return.
The Story. If this program has highlighted something you'd like prayer for, we'd love to pray for you. Call 1-800-PRAY-FOR-ME. That's 1-800-772-936. It's a free call. Or text 0401 132 888.
Hi, I'm Jimmy Colfax and this is The Story. Our guest today is Amanda Donahoe, who's the CEO of Servants Community Housing in Melbourne. Before the break, we heard how the Lord began to develop in her a heart for helping the oppressed and marginalised in society. Also, we heard how she met her future husband, who had a similar calling. Next, we'll hear how that calling starts to grow as Amanda continues her chat with Eric Scatterbo.
I do remember one time we were living in the country and I was driving into one of the big country cities and walked past a couple of guys that were hitchhiking and just had a sense that I should pick them up. And I thought, of course not. Of course you can't pick them up. You know, you're a single woman in a car. You're not going to pick up two hitchhikers, two male hitchhikers. So kept going and did my shopping. There was a homeless person on the street. You know, I didn't put anything in the hat. Went to the local bathrooms and there was a young girl that had some sort of episode and there was a few people in the, the hand washing area and they all leapt in to help this girl who was on the floor and obviously needed an ambulance or something. I just felt completely inadequate, not the sort of person that, would jump in and help. And so I just left, very sheepishly left it all to all these other awesome women. And then as I was driving back home, I looked in the rear vision mirror and I saw the two young men that were hitchhiking. They'd had to walk all the way through that town and it obviously taken them ages because I'd been shopping. And I looked up and I knew them. They were two people that had been on a camp that I'd been on recently. And it was almost like, the cock crowing, the story of the cock crowing. Yeah, where three times I had an opportunity to help people and I did nothing. And I felt like I guess I felt quite convicted, like, you say you're a good Christian and you want to help people and you want to love other people, but actually when I give you opportunities, you don't do anything. And I'm not saying that I should have picked those people up, but it was like I felt like it was just a salutary lesson that, okay, so how can I help people? And, if I feel like there's an opportunity, maybe don't hold back,
So the Lord's kind of getting your attention in
Yeah,
this area.
very, very much so. And, my husband and I, we wanted to do the right thing, or when I say the right thing, we wanted to live a radical Christian life. It was sort of a bit of a thing back in the 80s to think about community, to think about living differently.
Who were your role models that you were thinking about?
We were at Hawthorne West Baptist Church at the time, and it was very much a community church, reaching out to the neighbours. They had barbecues and things in the park for the local neighbours. They had a cleaning service that was operated from the church. They had a medical service that was operated for the church. So there were two doctors that were both members of the church, and they would ride their bicycles to people's houses to do home visits because they believed that was a better way to actually deliver a service to people, to know the environment that they were living in. And there was a veggie co-op where we all bought, veggies from the pastor's garage. People were buying houses together. People were renting together. So it was really quite radical.
Yeah.
I mean, you think of the Jesus hippie movement, and it was
that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah,
everybody's sharing.
Let's not all have a lawnmower. Let's have one lawnmower and share and have meals together. So meals,
life in community.
Yeah, meals were a really big part. We'd often have lunch after
I'm all
church.
For that. That's wonderful.
It's about sharing bread together. So we had that as the backdrop, and then I suppose, we moved away to the country for a little while, and at that point, because we'd moved away from the church, we were still trying to think, what do we do? Because my husband had a job, and we had a house, and we had 2 kids.
So it's easy at that point to just
very
kind of get
easy, and you get
back to just doing life.
Yeah. But we didn't feel comfortable in that. Necessarily, we thought, we can do more. So we were praying and reflecting for maybe 6 months or so, and we were thinking about going to work with Indigenous people in Northern Australia. But in the end, we during that time, we got a phone call from our old pastor at the church. And in our absence, they had suddenly become managers of a government-owned rooming house. And that came about because there was this rooming house. There were a lot of boarding houses in the area. I mean, it's a rooming house now, but in the old days it was called a boarding house. The church were concerned when they heard that this boarding house was going to be closed down and that all these people were going to be homeless. And so the church...
so if they didn't do something, all those people would be out on the street.
That's right. Yep. And a lot of the boarding houses were closing down because it was was becoming very gentrified. The land prices were increasing. So a lot of these old boarding houses were being sold off and the owners were becoming very wealthy. Also, increasing regulation meant that the health inspector would come around and inspect your kitchen because often with a boarding house came breakfast and dinner. So the church advocated to the government saying, you need to do something about these poor homeless people, or these people are about to be homeless. And government turned around and said, well, we will buy the property, but you need to form a committee of management and run it.
Oh.
And so the church like, okay, well, and they did. And so 6 weeks before Christmas, the pastor and his wife found themselves in residence at this particular boarding house. Church did it, saying that they would do it, but on 2 conditions. One was that they wanted to continue the meals, so breakfast and dinner, because, as I said before, church was very keen on eating together. They see it as a way of sharing and
breaking
caring.
Bread together.
Breaking bread, exactly. But the other thing that they said was that they wanted to have managers that lived on site, and that was all about creating community, sharing life alongside people that live on the margins. So you're not just sort of flying in, flying out. You're actually immersed in what's going on, and you are walking alongside people that are doing it tough. So when the pastor rang up, my husband and I, we prayed about it and thought, okay, we just thought, okay, this sounds like this is what we should be doing. So we said yes. We hadn't seen the place.
You said yes without having seen the place.
Yeah. And then we sold our house because we didn't want to be running back. We knew it would be hard.
Talk about a step of faith.
Yeah, we thought this could be really, really tough, and we didn't want to have a home to run back to. We just thought, no, let's go jump all into this.
But this is scratching the itch, so to speak, of helping the marginalized, which your husband and yourself had.
Yep.
So that kind of solves that issue, but you knew it was going to have some challenges.
Yeah. Driving in, that was the best bit. Well, because it's this beautiful, beautiful 1860s mansion, and so it's huge. So it was like, oh, wow, what a blessing. This is not what I expected to come to, to see this gorgeous building that just lifted your spirits just as you drove in the driveway. But then when we did the walkthrough, and there were just these men sitting there on these scruffy chairs, and the men looked scruffy, and they were just staring at me, and I thought, oh my gosh, what have I done here? What? Why am I doing this? Am I actually? I don't have what it takes. I don't have anything in common with these people. I'm not going to know what to say. I'm not going to know what to do. Yeah, it was quite a sinking feeling. But anyway, we'd committed, so we moved in.
And again, these are people, if it wasn't for this home, would be homeless.
Yeah. We had our 2 children, so, they were sort of 18 months and 4 years or something like that. And
so you're living in this big house?
Yeah, there's a 2-bedrooms flat set aside for the managers. So we were there, and it's sort of right in the middle. So you can hear people walking up and down the footpath beside your window in the middle of the night. If people were talking, you'd get woken up. We would have to get up and do breakfast, and there wasn't a lot of remuneration attached to the position, but it was...
So your husband gave up his career.
Yeah.
What was he doing before that?
He was an environmental health officer. So,
oh, wow. So that's a significant difference.
They stepped completely outside what he was doing. And this job was as full on as you wanted to make it. You could just work 24/7 if you wanted to, because there were 38 people that you were residing with. And, some people wanted to have conversations and other people didn't want to have conversations. Some people back then there were lots of issues with alcohol. So,
I imagine all these men, so only men.
Back then we had about 5 women, but it wasn't, then you've got 5 women living with all these men. So, this is back in the 80s where it was sort of okay, where certainly these days women don't want to live with men. But back then it was just the way it was, even women were living in boarding houses. So,
well, as I was going to say, all these people, they all had a story.
Yeah, there was one guy that had 2 birth dates because he was adopted, and so he had problems with alcohol, and probably was because he just couldn't, his identity, he couldn't work out who he was. And, there was another guy that was an orphan. I lived in an orphanage and had been bashed and had some deafness as a result of that. There was quite a few people that worked, and that's why we served breakfast, because there was some quite low-paying jobs that they had. Lots of unemployed people were there. It was quite a mixed bag. There were some people that had intellectual disabilities, some had physical disabilities. I remember one man just had a lot, very arthritic, could barely open the key to his door, key to his room, I should say. So, lots of heart-wrenching stories. And so I guess that's where I feel like I do have a lot of compassion and empathy for people, and certainly being in that environment 4 years were where I can see now that my compassion and empathy and understanding grew for people. You see that it's not necessarily, most of the time, it is not their fault. Why the reason that they are there is generally not of their own making. Or if it's of their own making, you might say it might be mistakes that have been made that have been, we all make mistakes through life, and sometimes some people's mistakes have more impact and more disastrous on their life. And I just find that heart-wrenching.
Well, that was part 1 of Eric Scatterbo's conversation with Amanda Donahoe. She's sharing her life journey and how she eventually becomes the CEO of Servants Community Housing in Melbourne, which is a charity that houses homeless people. We just heard how the Lord led Amanda and her husband to become the managers of their church's rooming house. Next time, we'll hear how the Lord leads them to help the oppressed and marginalised in society in various places around Australia before tragedy happens in 2006. All that and more is coming up next time. Meanwhile, to find out more about Servants Community Housing, their website is servants.org.au. Once again, that's servants.org.au. Finally, we'll end today with the lyrics of a classic Christian song that really sums up Amanda's heart for serving others. It's called Whatsoever You Do, and the lyrics go like this. Whatsoever you do to the least of my people, that you do unto me. When I was hungry, you gave me to eat. When I was thirsty, you gave me to drink. When I was homeless, you opened the door. When I was naked, you gave me your coat. Now enter into the home of my Father. Whatsoever you do to the least of my people, that you do unto me. Well, until next time when we'll hear more of Amanda's story, I'm Jimmy Colfax, encouraging you to share your story with someone today.
Next time on The Story.
I remember the morning after this tragic event and just waking up and having that sense of sort of remembering what had happened the day before and realising, that he had gone. But having this sort of thought come into my head, well, your life is like a book, and that was part 1, and this is now part 2.
Amanda Donahoe and her husband always had a heart for helping the marginalised and the oppressed in society. Sadly, Amanda's husband was tragically killed in 2006, and suddenly her partner in ministry was gone. We'll hear what happens next as Amanda shares more of her story next time.
The Story. Just another way Vision is helping you look to God daily.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.